cover, there are four types of, So passages fall into four main types. The first one will be literature. Then we have social sciences, humanities, and science. Now, before we start and discuss about each question, we'll discuss how to approach each passage. Well, the time is really gone when we used to read the passage a lot, and a lot of time was wasted on that. So what we're supposed to do is we are supposed to stick to skimming. That's called Skim and Scan. So before we start, the total time allotted to all the students will be 35 minutes. In 35 minutes, you're supposed to solve these four passages. And if I divide this time, that comes up to be 8 minutes and 45 seconds each passage. So with practice, you should know the first thing, that which passage are you strong with, which passage are you weak with. That means stronger and weaker means which passage you spend less time and which passage you spend more time. So discussing about my first passage, which is literature, each passage is followed by 10 questions. There are 35 minutes and 40 questions in total. So 10 questions in each passage. So what is fiction? Fiction is about a story. When we approach a passage, we should know what is each passage all about. So when I talk about passage literature, that means fiction, characters, how are they developed, the dialogues, the thoughts, how are these characters related to each other. So here we are supposed to actually focus on four main points, which is main idea of the passage. Point number 1. Point number 2, who are the main characters? Point number 3, what are the top 2-3 arguments, and what is the theme of the passage? That's how you'll be able to follow up with a literature passage. First and last paragraph is very important. That will explain you about the main idea, and that will give you a knowledge about what are the characters all about. Then it will be followed by the next passage, which is social science. In social science passage, this passage is a lengthy passage as compared to the rest 3 passages, but it's pretty straightforward. So when I talk about social science, what comes to our mind is psychology, architecture, sociology. These are the topics, those are covered with the second passage and 10 questions. Then we have third passage, which is called humanities. Now, when we discuss about humanities, the topics will be art, dance, movies, architecture, history, films, criticism. So basically what you're supposed to focus on first, last paragraph while skimming the passage. And humanities passages focuses mainly on the tone. The author's voice is positive or negative. I repeat, the author's voice is positive or negative. This will help you to identify the answer. Then we have the fourth passage, which is science. Before I actually discuss about science, humanities is a very short passage. It's very, very simple. And this passage would not take you more time as compared to the rest 3 passages. So I suggest you should try with starting with humanities passage, where you can solve this passage quickly and go to the rest 3. Then we come up to the fourth passage, which is science. Science means biology, chemistry. This particular passage is going to be very informative and detailed. So natural science passages, they tend to have a certain structure. They begin by describing a study, usually a scientific problem, 99%. And the introduction, which is the initial body paragraph, describes about an invention or an experiment. So your job is to identify the keywords rather, and focus on transitional words to get your answers. Some science passages, they go into a lot of depth, detail, and you don't have to really worry about the theories and those deep details about the passage. What you need to focus is the initial explanation about the experiment, which is there in the first and last paragraph. So now this is about a background knowledge for each passage. What is skimming? Skimming is essentially called the speed reading. Speed reading means when you group the words and you read them faster. You are supposed to not waste 5 minutes or 4 minutes reading the passage. You're supposed to read the first paragraph carefully. Then you're supposed to read the first and last line of rest of the center paragraphs. And then you're supposed to read the last paragraph completely. Why am I saying the first and last line of rest of the center paragraphs? When you read the first line and last line, you will be able to make an educated guess. You will be able to predict the center paragraphs. And this will save your time. This should ideally take, with practice, not more than 2 or 2.5 minutes. So once you spend 2 minutes on the passage, skim and scan, and then you go to questions. We will discuss about how to approach each question as well. So now the key point is you look at the key sentence, the topic itself, and you guess that paragraph. Focus on transitional words, keywords, adjectives to get your answers. What is a topic sentence? Topic sentence will give you a general framework of the content of the full passage. So topic sentence are the first sentence of each body paragraph. That will help you identifying the main idea of the passage. So there are certain things that students often do which they are not supposed to do is, point number 1, stop sub vocalizing. In my sessions, during my sessions, I have seen a lot of students sub vocalizing. Sub vocalizing means they read aloud. They read out loud. So when you read out loud, you understand less. So you're supposed to quietly skim through the words, skim through the lines, and register in the first go itself. This takes time, so you have to avoid doing sub vocalizing, which will of course come with practice. The second point is see the group words together. When you read, group the words and read them together. That's how you'll be able to perceive and process more than one word at a time. So try to read cluster of words together. And when you read the words, focus on the center word that will give you knowledge about your previous word on the left and on the right. That will help you to identify and skim scan faster. So always focus on the center word of the line. Now, it's very, very important for all the students to invest most of your time in answering the questions. So that means 2 to 3 minutes you should spend skimming the passage and rest of the 6-7 minutes on the questions. Very, very importantly, after practicing, you should know which passage are you very good with, faster with. So first, you are supposed to save your worst passage for the end. Suppose when my strongest passage is humanities, I start with humanities. Then I go to science, then I go to social science, and then I go to literature. Because I find humanities very easy. And that saves a lot of time. So if you can try with this order, this will save a lot of time of yours. So analyze with practice which passage type is your weakest. Time yourself how long it takes to read the passage. How long does it take to answer the question, note it down and work on that. If you know that you're consistently, baffled with a certain passage type, leave that passage for the end. So you should do it for with practice. Don't risk when you're sitting for the actual test, don't experiment. These experiments have to be done in your sessions with your practice. Then another type of passage which is often been seen in these tests is a paired passage. Paired passage means where you have two passages, passage A and passage B under one passage. So how are you supposed to solve those passages? You're supposed to see Are these passages, they differ from each other or they agree from each other? That means, do they complement each other or do they contradict? So the first paragraph of passage A and passage B and the last paragraph of passage A and passage B will help you identifying the relationship between the two. Now, why is it important? If you know the relationship between these two passages, you will be able to eliminate and choose the right answer. So identifying the relationship will help you answering the questions for a paired passage. Now moving on to the questions. As we can see on the screen, there are 10 questions here. This is how the screen looks like. There is a flag option in the right corner. It's very important for you to flag the question. If you find any question difficult, flag it. So 1, 2, 5, 8, 9, and 10. That's how the questions are. What are you supposed to do? You are never supposed to start with the main idea question. Now, why did I tell you skim the passage? Now, you are supposed to always start with the highlighted questions. So these questions will be from the second, third, fourth, or fifth paragraph. Now is the time. You don't have the double time when you read the passage completely. You spend five minutes. So skimming gives you an idea when you start with these highlighted questions, and when you go on solving all the highlighted questions, you will have better working knowledge about the passage. So once you are done with the highlighted questions, then you should start with main idea and accept question. So how are you supposed to solve the main idea question? Main idea question means they will give you 4 options, A, B, C, D. You're supposed to look for the big picture answer, the central claim of the passage. Once you're done with the other questions, that's recommended that then you should come to the main idea question. Then we have highlighted paragraph primarily serves to. So this is called a function question. When they ask you about a particular paragraph, that's called the purpose of the paragraph. So when you summarize the paragraph, you immediately get the answer. Then 45% of the questions will be fact-based. Fact-based question means where they ask you about an evidence, where they ask you about an answer which is very clearly mentioned in the passage. Now, students find fact-based question difficult because they can't locate that word. So what are you supposed to do and how are you supposed to approach a fact-based question? You have to identify the keyword in the question. Suppose here, the narrator makes it clear the foundation is now interested in the account for her and Robert's life. So the keyword here is foundation. And the third paragraph, when I skim the passage in the last line where they talk about financial health, foundation. So answer, what I mean is answer is always surrounded with the keyword from the question. You pick up the keyword from the question, you scan through the passage, answer is surrounded, financial health, and it says funds needed. This is just an example to give you how to approach. So now students, when they find the fact-based question difficult, that means you're not identifying the keyword correctly. So identify the keyword correctly, scan through the passage, answer is surrounded with the keyword. That's be picked up from the question. So fact-based questions assess your ability to understand how quickly you can access the right point of the passage as you have the knowledge of the structure and the content of the passage. Another function question. You will have at least 4 to 5 highlighted questions. So if you solve these highlighted 4 to 5 questions, you will have good knowledge about the passage. And then you should approach the rest of the questions. And again, a highlighted question. So now here, if the phrase is highlighted, that means you're supposed to read the entire paragraph. And this is also called a function question, where you see the purpose of the paragraph. What is the purpose of the paragraph? Again, a highlighted question that helps you to understand the passage better. This is a fact-based question which you will leave. You will first start with all the highlighted questions. Then you have a very, very important question that's called an inference question. Now, inference question means you draw a conclusion, something which is not directly stated. You look for an implicit fact. This has to be solved as a fact-based question again, where you identify the keyword, scan through the passage, and answer is surrounded with the keyword. That's called an inference question. So you have 4 to 5 function questions. Then you have a main idea question. Then you have an inference question. And then you have a vocabulary question. Now, vocabulary question means, as used in the sentence, highlighted phrase, they will always give you with a highlighted phrase, decent age. So what you're supposed to do and how are you supposed to approach a vocab question? Vocab question means where you're not supposed to see the literal meaning. They will give you to trap you. You're supposed to replace it with the meaning of the sentence. So the steps for a vocab questions are, you're supposed to see step number 1, are these lines above and below positive, negative, or neutral? So you're supposed to plug in the positive, negative, neutral method. Step number 2, you will eliminate the opposite option. If the lines are positive, you can eliminate the negative option. If the lines are negative, then you can eliminate the positive option. So plug in positive, negative, that will help you to eliminate the option. Then the next step is look for a context clue. See what the word is surrounded with. So basically what you're doing is you're replacing it with contextual meaning, not the literal meaning. That's how you solve a vocab question. So basically you return to the passage, read the sentence, see, you have to fill up the blank. Decent age has to be replaced. That's how you solve a vocab question. Then you have another type of question that's called a character question. So character questions will only be, mostly would be there in a fiction passage. So as you skim in the literature passage, you try to develop a mental image of each character. And that's how, and they will ask you questions like, according to the passage, what kind of a student was Sarah? So based on your prior knowledge, skimming of the passage, based on the passage, you're supposed to predict an answer before you choose. So before even you read the answers, you have a mental image, of the passage. You can predict an answer and your prediction will absolutely match with one of the option, A, B, C, or D. So that's how you do a character question. So anybody has any questions till now, ma'am?
No, I can't see any questions any questions in the Q&A. If attendees, you have any questions, feel free to put it up in the Q&A feature below.
Then another type of a question we have, which is a very rare question, that's called a sequence question. So questions about order of events. So there are certain words that help you to answer these questions very quickly. Words like first, second, third, the keywords from the questions, you'll have to absolutely, when you read the question, identify the keyword. So keywords will help you to identify the answer. You have to focus on certain words. Please note down words like after, before, begin, eventually, first, finish, however. So these transitional words are very, very helpful to identify the answer with the certain type of question. So these kind of questions, as I said, would mostly will be there in the fiction passage. Now we come to process of elimination. A lot of times this happens when I'm solving a passage. I don't know why A is my correct answer, which you really don't need to bother. Process of elimination is a weapon to solve any reading passage. Process of elimination means if you know half right, half wrong, eliminate. One very important point is extreme or absolute words. Extreme words like only, never, always. So if the option is extremely magnetic and if it has a extreme or an absolute word, eliminate it. So process of elimination, if the option is there, if the option is there in one of the paragraph, that doesn't mean it's an answer. If it's not answering your question, if it's not answering your keyword, eliminate. So elimination process is extremely helpful. Even if you're sometimes not convinced with the answer, if you know why is A, B, C wrong, you get scores if you mark the answer. So focus on the process of elimination. Rather than reading the entire passage completely, skimming works. Spending 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes on the passage. You go to the questions will take you to the answer, the keyword will help you, and the keyword from the question will help you to eliminate the answers, the options. So that's it from my side for reading. Anyone has any questions on ACT reading? You can refer to the books like Sterling, Barron, Princeton. Practice is all I need. As the earlier teacher also, I would like to say the same thing. A perfect 36 is not difficult in reading because the passages are very simple. There is no point spending the entire passage, understanding the passage, skim. The questions will help you to identify, focus on the lines, focus on the part of the passage, understand what the lines are telling you. If it's a highlighted questions, if it's a vocab question, you get the passage and you can guess the answer. So even if the passage is difficult or it's easy, it doesn't matter. What you need to focus is the process of elimination, the process of how you solve each question, how you read the lines and register, you understand the lines quickly. So there is no point reading the entire passage for five minutes. Stop doing that, skim and scan, and that's how you get the answer quickly. So don't spend too much time on reading the passage. That's all from my side now.